Hey guys, this is Tanner Invest here. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Today we got an awesome video because of what happened on Friday. A lot of news has come out in the Ethereum treasury space. So today we're going to get into not only the news from Jackson Hole regarding interest rates, we're going to talk about how that affects cryptocurrencies and small cap companies like Tom Lee has been talking about. There's also a new interview that came out from Tom Lee that is some of the most bullish sentiment I've ever seen on cryptocurrencies. I took a lot of notes. It was an hour and 20 video. We'll get into that and I'll link it in the description. But I also want to get into the price action on Friday because we saw a huge pump in Ethereum, Sharplink Gaming, Bitmine Emergent Technologies, and some other Ethereum data treasuries, as well as, the whole market as a whole. But ETH definitely outperformed the market. We'll get into that. And then also I want to talk about some of the more like frothier, in my opinion, plays in the market. Like we talked about in a couple videos ago, a company like ETHZilla that's come out and they just released their pipe. They unlocked the pipe. They also had a big exercise for 2.4 million warrants out there. So that's what caused ETHZilla over the past week to trade down very, very, very significantly. And guys, this is my 9th video on these Ethereum treasury plays. We've talked about, all the importance of the pipe, what that means. So I hope none of you guys, if you've been following along my channel for the last month and a half, didn't buy into that play because I saw the writing on the wall. I could have maybe dove into it a little bit deeper for you guys just to be a little bit more cautious, but you live and you learn. Hopefully none of you guys got destroyed there. Now let's go ahead and hop in. Appreciate, by the way, the support. Before we just hop in for 1 second, thank you guys so much. I'm at 2.5 thousand subscribers now. I cannot believe that. It's only been about 2 months that I've been doing YouTube, and we've had a lot of success so far. I'm glad I'm able to provide some value and some deeper insights to the ETH treasuries, different stocks and equities as well. So really what it boils down to is I'm addicted to learning and researching all this stuff. So I take in tens of hours of content from all over the place, and I try to consolidate them into these videos. So thank you so much for tuning in. Now let's go ahead and jump in here, guys. This is the information from Powell. Of course, if you guys haven't been living under a rock, you may have seen the stock market this week, and everything really went up. And that's because people were expecting, and throughout the week, the stocks and cryptocurrencies were trading down because people were more expecting Powell to be hawkish, come this meeting. And Tom Lee, I swear he's the best economist in the entire world, was one of the only people out there that said Jerome Powell will be dovish. And people thought he was crazy. And what happened? Jerome Powell was dovish. The guys, Tom Lee literally has the best batting average, I think, of any analyst that goes on CNBC, any analyst that's media facing out there. So this is why, when he got into Bitmine Emergent Technologies, I hopped in and I've been, thrilled with the performance so far. And so that being said, Tom Lee did tweet. He actually has a pinned tweet now on his X channel, or X, whatever you call it, his X channel. But Fed Powell is dovish equals green light, small caps, Bitcoin, Ethereum. So these are obviously the most that are going to benefit from interest rates being lower. Small cap companies out there, they just significantly have more borrowing needs. And so with lower interest rates, they can borrow at a cheaper cost. So compared to mega caps and larger cap companies, they don't rely as much on financing as these smaller caps do. So obviously it's great for them. Bitcoin, Ethereum, risk on assets do really well in low interest rate environments because cheaper borrowing costs for individuals as well, retail traders. And so typically risk on assets like cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum also have a good time in low interest rate environments. So Tom has been saying that over and over and over, and this is what we're seeing. So come September, the market's really pricing in now a cut to happen, and then maybe 2 cuts, 2.5, 3, somewhere in that ballpark by the end of the year. So I really do want to hop into this video real quick. So there's a great video on Tom Lee after the Fed decision, him going on, and I skipped to later in the video because they did talk about ETH treasury plays. And one of the big narratives that we've talked about, we've obviously talked about stablecoin technology and how it's going to really increase the value of Ethereum because the activity over time. And one thing I've mentioned is that smart contracts, not just through stablecoins, but also tokenization of content, media, things like that are really important because what how in the future are you going to be able to tell if the White House comes out with news, whether that's fake, whether it's an AI written article? So in the future, we can tokenize this using smart contracts. And finally, this is the first time I think I've heard someone else really diving into this. And Tom Lee actually talked about that using Gen AI to verify humans from robots. So let's take a look at this.
Keep in mind, Ethereum is also the place where when agentic AI comes together, when you have robots and you want proof of human, you want to make sure those commands come from a verified source. That's all taking place on a smart contract. A lot of it will be Ethereum.
Tom, thank you.
So there we go, guys. Another reason I've been talking about the fact that Ethereum stablecoin technology, not just Ethereum, we've talked about Solana and XRP, but this blockchain technology is going to really change the world. Now, this is like the most exciting part of this video today, guys, because there's a new interview that came out from The Compound. I'm going to link this below. It was their 205th interview. They've had Tom Lee on before. They are an investor podcast. But guys, this interview was great because Tom Lee, he was excited after the Fed cuts. But there's a lot of stuff that came out of this. And I'm not going to play any snippets from it, but I am going to go over just I watched the entire hour and 20 video. I'm going to get into kind of the key highlights in order based on what they started. But let's start with the fact that Tom Lee thinks financials can become a huge percentage of the S&P in the future because of stablecoin technology. He thinks that over time, financials are going to have a lot of success because there will be a huge re-rating coming with change in financial systems due to stablecoins. So that means companies like he mentioned JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, but also guys, I'm invested in SoFi Technologies, and they're already on the crypto, the stablecoin bandwagon. Actually, they just filed some patents for SoFi stablecoin. So I think the leaders in the banking space are all, I agree with Tom. I've already, this is why I'm so invested in SoFi. One of the many reasons. But I think financials as well are going to become, way larger than they are today. Right now, they have trade at low multiples, but they're going to get so much revenue from this new world of financial technology. So he kept reiterating, we're still early, and I've talked about that as well. Obviously, we're still very, very early, guys. He talked about, if you had advice to give to a young person nowadays, because, there's a lot of young people that are having a hard time finding jobs. And ultimately, his answer was, he said, you should invest in the stock market. He encourages everybody that's young to put money in the market because, yeah, you might not have the most income, but if you can make the most out of your income and compound it over years and years and years, you're going to be successful no matter what. And that's why I think you watching this video, me watching this video, obviously I'm not your financial advisor, definitely check with them, but investing is super important, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. He actually mentioned that people back in the 80s and 90s, 2000s who invested in basketball teams would have had more money if they just put money into the market. I didn't fact check this at all, but I'm sure it does, go hand in hand, where if these guys spent hundreds of millions on a basketball team, if they put hundreds of millions in the market over the last 20 years, we've had an incredible market performance. So they likely would have made a lot more money. So that's something we all have access to, guys, each of us. And so that's awesome to hear. Tom Lee also said, in the future, now we're going to move tracks to BitMine Emergent Technologies and the Ethereum digital asset treasuries. But Tom Lee said in the future, they may pay with 3% dividends to investors that hold BMNR because the staking yield, they might be able to just reinvest that back to their investors in the future as a dividend to attract people to join the stock. I think that's awesome. Obviously it's going to depend on the environment, the price of Ethereum, all these things, because right now they're going to stake the ETH and they're going to buy more ETH as the value of the underlying asset is at such a cheap price in their mind with such high upside. So in the future, there may be a time where they're actually giving that 3%, maybe not the whole 3%, but they're going to be giving a share back to their investors. That's awesome to hear. They also said this has been great this as in the pullback in ETH over the last couple of weeks has been great for BitMine. And I've talked about this as well. So since BitMine has still been trading at a premium on the net asset value at about 1.7 times and higher over the last few weeks, this pullback in ETH being lower has allowed them to, dilute shareholders. We've talked about that using ATM offerings, buy more Ethereum, and ultimately it's going to be better for them in the long run that ETH has actually pulled back a bit. this was obviously before Jackson Hole, and now ETH is now hitting all-time highs. I still think, guys, we're super early on ETH, just like Tom Lee has said. But that's interesting to hear. Maybe I should have been putting a little bit more money into BMNR. But that being said, he also said this shocked me. And, we've talked about the flippening on this channel and how there are a lot of people out there. Even Joseph Lubin has talked about the flippening of Ethereum's market cap actually surpassing Bitcoin. And Tom Lee said he thinks there's a high probability of over 50% that there will be a flippening and that ETH will flip Bitcoin over time. I mean, okay, let's step back for 2 seconds. Not to get everybody too bullish and running through brick walls right now. You got to remember, I've talked about this before. Step back, listen to who's talking. Obviously, Tom Lee is genius, but now Tom Lee also has a big stake in Ethereum. So he might be a little biased on that perspective, but he might also be correct. So just keep that in mind. You do your own research and figure it out yourself. But I also think that could happen. At the beginning, I was like, I don't see that happening. I think Bitcoin still, is like digital gold. Ethereum's kind of like the digital oil story. But that being said, Tom Lee just a higher probability of over 50%. That's crazy. Now, he did still say that he thinks Bitcoin is going to go to 1 million, but that he still thinks there will be a flippening, which means the price of Ethereum will trade, even if it's 1-to-1 and it's the same price as Bitcoin, that means the price of Ethereum, guys, will be tremendous from here, because the price of Bitcoin's market cap is like 5x that of Ethereum. So to get to that point, Bitcoin, if it stayed at today's prices, Ethereum would be trading somewhere around 20,000 if Bitcoin just stayed exactly where it was. That would cause a flippening based on today's pricing. Now, another thing you said was you need liquidity for treasuries to work. Obviously, we've talked about this as well. You need liquidity, and he talked about the importance of why liquidity matters, which I thought was really interesting. He said because institutions and private investors, in order to want to get into plays like these that are a little bit more risky in cryptocurrency and all that, you need liquidity within the stock. And we have seen that with Bitmine, because they are literally traded as the number 10 highest volume stock in the entire market. And so that's great for institutions, because they see that liquidity and they're like, well, hey, if we get in, we can get out really quickly. We can get in, we can get out without us being stuck on a low volume stock and potentially lose a lot of money. So they can get in and get out fast using algorithmic trading, all the things that are really important to institutions. Now, the last thing is that he did mention that there is an enormous interest in a secondary capital raise. Now, he was asked this question and he didn't really answer it fully, but someone asked, hey, are you going to do a secondary raise? Which happens, pretty often. I think they've already done a secondary, but they might, he basically said there has been enormous interest in another secondary raise. As a shareholder, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm going to let them, have their, make the right choices. But that being said, it would dilute shareholders. They would likely have it at a lower price than today's volume, but interesting to see there. Let's go ahead and hop into the price action, guys. I'm going to link this video in the description below. This is actually one where I've talked about videos. I've linked them all in my descriptions of my videos, but I think this is one that you need to watch. Like, these guys asked some really good questions in this video, and Tom Lee is very, very open. And so he answers a lot of great questions, not only about the Ethereum treasuries, he talks about the market as a whole. So I think that's really cool. Now, let's go ahead and hop into the price action of Ethereum. We can see we have now reached all-time highs, guys. All-time highs on Ethereum. This week, we can see in the last day, we're up 1.3%, but after Jackson Hole, we were at 4,200, and immediately within just a few hours throughout the day, went from 4,200 all the way up to 4,800, hitting all-time highs. And then we have retraced just a tad bit, but there was not a head fake in the market. The market was beautiful on Friday. Yeah, no head fake happened. So my portfolio is still trading at all-time highs right this second. So that's great to see. Bitmine, we can see here, Bitmine is now at $55 a share. It went up 12%. I wanted to show them first. I'm now up 50% on my trade. I wish I bought way more. I actually did buy some on Friday or Thursday. I bought for 48 because right now Tom Lee mentioned that they have over 30, I think it's $32 or $33 within the underlying asset. So if you're trading, you're buying at 48 and the price is 33, we already know the multiple on the net asset value equation that we've talked about a lot. So I felt like, still a little risky, still trading at like a 1.5 NAV, but I felt like it was a good time to potentially get in case Tom Lee was right and that Jerome Powell was dovish. I should have, obviously, hindsight's 2020. I think I put in $500 extra, nothing crazy. Now, oops, I meant to have this SBET. I want to show you guys the SBET chart real quick. The SBET chart, actually, it's good to see because we actually, over the past few days, we've seen a little bit of a trend here where SharpLink has gotten, based on their net asset value, has actually been going up a little bit more incrementally than BitMine. And BitMine on the down days has actually gone down a little bit more than SBET. That's actually, I think, healthy for both plays because it shows you that the price and the premium that's placed based on their underlying asset is really important. And so, like I said, over and over and over, and I'm going to keep saying it, if ETH wins, we all win. Ethereum is ultimately what we need to be looking at, and that's going to dictate the price of the stock over time. All right, so let's hop into the multiple NAV update. Thank you so much to Risk on Bobby. He puts a lot of work. Daily comes out with these charts for digital asset treasuries for Ethereum specifically. And so obviously, let's highlight BMNR first. BMNR, we have 1.5x on the mNAV. That has gone down over the past couple weeks. We did see them as high as 2.1, 1.7, now 1.5. So that's, I think a pretty healthy sign that we are, keeping in mind that multiple on the net asset value. And so SBET as well, we are now at a 1.1, looking really, in my opinion, attractive at that current valuation. And then we have fully deployed mNAVs of 1.0 and 1.2. Now, for the other plays, I know I get asked a lot to review, BitDigital, BTCS. I haven't done a ton of research yet. I know BitDigital is probably one that I would look into next, personally for myself. But I am gonna still put ETHZilla, FGNX, and Game very far on the back burner, and DYNX as well. I'm not going to be buying any of these anytime soon. One thing, I want to highlight, and I'll be getting into ETHZilla, like I said at the beginning of the video. So you may have noticed, if you look at these charts, ETHZilla over the past day, their mNAV has been cut in half. Okay. And then this is just over the past day, guys, because we know earlier in the week, I can actually probably find it and I'll put it up here. But they were trading way higher. They were trading like 6, 5, 4, 3. They just have gone down. Let's look at their share price. So we had a high, and this is based on Robinhood's hour bar data. So this is what it was closed at the hour, $15.54. And now we're trading at $3.56. So guys, a lot of people, once they announced that they're going to be doing the ETH digital asset treasury, my first thought is, heck no, I'm not buying. Heck no, I'm not buying that. Because guess why? They have a pipe. Talked about pipes. I literally have a video where we went over the acronyms and what a pipe is. So if you want to watch that, I'll put it down below. But pipe, that initial investment from private investors, they ultimately, at the end of the day, that pipe will get unlocked, and then they are able to sell their shares. They can sell the shares that they bought, but they're typically locked up for a period of time. And so we're going to see here, this actually wasn't due to the pipe. You might see this big drop down on August 13th. This actually was not the pipe unlock. So what this was that right here, we can see that on August 8th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, that there were holders of warrants that purchased shares of common stocks. So what a warrant is basically, it's a way to raise capital and dilute at a future date. And so depending on how the stock raises, these holders of these warrants can purchase shares at a lower predetermined stock price. And so you can see here, let's look at this biggest one here. There was a warrant of 1.3 million shares, and they were able to have an exercise price of $1.50 per share. So let's just do like a quick little math here. I'm going to pull up my calc. $1.50 times 1,335,862. So on August 12th, this person spent $2 million, and the price of ETHZilla on August 12th was let's just say the close of August 12th at 4 p.m. was $10.24. That's when the market closed. So now let's multiply this by 1024. Or sorry, let's multiply their shares by $10.24. We just saw they had 1.335862, 1.335862. So now that $2 million just turned into $13 million for this person in an instant. Okay. And so when they released this prospectus here from an 8K, they talked about all these people who issued their warrants. And so now all these people now have shares out there and they can now sell those shares. So that's what probably happened. You know, actually, Risk on Bobby, I'm going to show this tweet now because he said, ETHZilla, one way to increase your float, unlock your pipe and all the penny warrants. Remember the 2.4 million in warrants that were exercised in the open market last week? Timing was Pelosi-esque, down 36% pre-market as of this writing. So this is why, guys, like, whenever ETHZilla came out, I had it in my video. I literally talked about it like the day it came out. I said I was not buying it. And this is exactly why, because this has happened with every single one of these companies, guys. Let's go look at BMNR. We have it up here, $135. What happened? Super dilution. Sharpling Gaming went all the way up here, $79. What happened? Dilution. So now I want to go back to ETHZilla because remember, this actually wasn't the pipe unlock. But even since the warrants were issued, they then unlocked the pipe late last week, and we've seen now since then, look at just what happened on Friday, 31% decrease. Over the past week, they're down 44%. So guys, this is why I've been talking about this chart so much, because I do think these multiple on these net asset values do matter. I've seen a lot of X posts and people are like, how could you not invest in ETHZilla? What a cool name. Haha. Oh my gosh, guys, what a great name. I'm going to definitely invest in that. But they have no idea what this number is. They have no idea that it's trading at a 2.3 on Friday after it was $4.81. Now it's trading at a 1.2. Now, if you really want to get in at maybe at these prices, that would make a little bit more sense. I still am not touching this thing right now. So just guys, whenever you're doing this stuff, please be careful. You know, we are seeing BMNR retract back to that 1.0, and maybe they, I mean, I don't think they will, but I'm saying they're going down. They were at a 2.1, 1.9, 1.7, 1.5. SBET has remained at 1.1, 1.2, 1.0, somewhere in that ballpark. And so we do see that the net asset value is important. Okay. Now, one thing to note too, I appreciate Risen Fit was kind of one of the guys that talked about this 8K. That kind of sparked some attention to it right away. And I did do the math. All right, so I figured I'd just show you the math here. So I just put together a spreadsheet with the dates, the shares, the exercise price. So this is the total amount that these investors spent on the day of them exercising their warrants. And then just for fun, I looked at 1554. This is the number we looked at on August 13th, right before it dropped from those warrants. And so I just, for fun, put together the math just to see the total proceeds that these guys got. So, you know, for example, this guy who spent $2 million turned $2 million into $20.7 million. So, the rich get richer, baby. Nah, just joking. But hey, really nothing against ETHZilla at all. This whole video was not meant to harp on ETHZilla. It literally was just to show you guys the importance of pipe, the importance of warrants, and how dilution matters early on for these digital assets treasuries. Now, in the future, when that mNAV now is grounded back to reality, I think, you know, this could seriously be someone's way to make money if you feel like you trust the management of the ETHZilla. At this time, I haven't done nearly enough research. I know they are backed by Peter Thiel. He obviously has backed many of these digital asset treasury companies, though. So it's not just ETHZilla that he's invested in. But that being said, guys, this is going to be the end of my video. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.